Hey guys, Poro here with another video, this time for my Day 3 recap of MSI 2025. There was only one series today, the highly anticipated final series of play-ins, with G2 against GAM, where the winner qualifies for bracket stage and the loser is eliminated. Heading into the tournament, the result may have seemed obvious, but the performances so far may tell a different story. Broken Blade and Skewmond have been underperforming in many of G2's games, and the other three players haven't been looking amazing either. On the flip side, GAM's players seem to be playing their style, which led to both teams beating Furia 3-2 and losing to BLG 3-0. I predicted G2 to win 3-1, still having faith in the players to turn it around, but many people feel as though their form has been bad enough that we may see the Vietnamese upset. Game 1 was a refreshing look for G2, as Broken Blade and Caps were able to perform well in the solo lanes, and Skewmond was finding many good plays around the map. The team bit off more than they could chew once early as GAM collapsed on a dive and got the better end of the trade, but after that it was mostly smooth sailing for G2 until the win. I docked Kiaya for getting solo killed, which led to the Renekton Snowball, as well as going for a pretty bad ult with no follow-up on two carries that both had flash after a dragon fight. I also docked Elio for getting caught in one shot before multiple fights. I thought Artemis overall played a solid Jhin game and the loss was not his fault. Game 2 was a bit scary at first as Hans played a level 1 fight pretty badly, followed by dying 2v2 early in bot. Against a better team, Hans would have already solo lost his team the game, but Caps and Skewmond were everywhere in early and mid to get advantages elsewhere, and a great TP flank from Broken Blade secured the lead for G2. There was one little mishap from BB in the enemy base near the end of the game that made it scary for an instant, but it didn't end up doing anything meaningful and G2 were able to close out easily. Game 3 started out decently for G2 with some good ganks from the Nunu, dragon stacking, and Caps building up an individual lead. However, G2 fumbled back-to-back teamfights and then started getting picked out one by one, and GAM were able to win the game with their better macro. I gave Kiaya a 4 for being able to teamfight very well on the Jax. Overall, a solid game from GAM and a big series of ints from G2. Game 4 was just a thrashing. Hans made multiple mistakes early which made the G2 dive draft borderline unplayable, and there was nothing for G2 to do against GAM's strong front-to-back team comp. Levi had an overall very solid Lilia performance, and Elio found multiple great plays on the Galio pick, whereas everyone on G2 seemed completely lost to this game. Game 5 was extremely tense, as both teams were running deathball comps that had equal reason to wait and scale. G2 with the inevitability of the Senna, and GAM with their space controlling Seraphine. G2 claimed almost every objective due to some nice pressure from Skewmond early, but the game was otherwise dead even at 2-2 until the 29-minute mark when Caps made two great plays in a row to blow the game open. For GAM, Elio and Artemis just could not find any advantages in their 2v2 dominant lane, and Arvis was purely lane gapped by Caps. With this, GAM ends their MSI run in 9th, and G2 qualifies for main stage with a lot of question marks on their mediocre play-ins play. With G2 qualifying, the top 8 matchups are already decided, so let's go over my predictions for those 4 series. First, we have Gen G versus G2, and quite frankly, I think this will be a stomp of epic proportions. G2 is likely the 8th best team left, and Gen G are the favorites to win the whole tournament. G2's one bright spot in Caps will have to deal with Chovy, the best player in the world right now, and I expect this to be a clean 3-0 for Gen G. Next up is AL versus Fly, and for this prediction, I'll be going back to Fly's early games. If they play early against AL the way they played against C9, they don't have a chance to win at all due to AL's amazing fighting and consistency. I think Fly is a good team, and I think they are probably the best Western representative here, but I will once again be predicting 3-0 for AL. For T1 versus CFO, I'm personally not anywhere near as high on CFO as many other people are, as I was not impressed with them domestically. Hongq and Kaiwing are just too exploitable, whether it be from nerfs or champion pools. Even at first stand, when CFO was at their best, they looked lost against HLE, and if T1 even keep a fraction of their playoffs form, I expect yet another 3-0 here. Finally, we have MKoi versus BLG, and this will be the only series where I don't predict a shutout. While I have more faith in BLG than other people, I think they looked quite shaky in play-ins, and MKoi is a much more consistent team than G2, with constant stable performances from Elyoya and Supa, and high upside with Merwin, Jojo, and Alvaro. I do think MKoi will run into big problems in the top lane 1v1, and I think with the exception of their jungle, BLG have better individual players across the board. Overall though, I would not be surprised to see BLG throw at least one game, and I think MKoi have the ability to punish Beichuan's mistakes, so I'll predict BLG winning 3-1. I'm predicting a lot of stomps, and historically this almost never happens, so we'll see if any of the teams can create some big upsets. However, 4 LCK LPL teams versus the 4 other teams is a rough start, about as one-sided as the draw could get. I've got nothing else for you all, I'll see you all next time. Bye!